Once upon a time, in a large community, lived three friends: Nneoma, Aṅụrịka, and Nkemdirim. Nkemdirim was the only child of an old widow. This widow was popularly known as Nwanyima because she loved things done beautifully. Nwanyima had raised her daughter Nkemdirim to be respectful and kind to people. Nneoma, on the other hand, was the most beautiful amongst the three friends and the only daughter of Chief Amadi, one of the richest men in their community. Because of the friendship Chief Amadi and the king shared, Nneoma was betrothed to the prince Obiajuru from childhood. Prince Obiajuru was a handsome young man. Despite his father's wealth, he still works hard and believes in building his empire. Prince Obiajuru is also humble and kind and has respect for everyone. When Prince Obiajuru was told about his betrothed Nneoma, he accepted her and loved her because she's just not beautiful but also hilarious. Nneoma would always brag about her prince before her friends, telling them that she is so lucky to be betrothed to the prince. She believes that nothing can make the prince leave her for anyone because no lady in their community is as beautiful as she is. One day, the three friends went to a nearby village to fetch firewood. When they heard a strange sound in the bush calling for help, Aṅụrịka was the first to hear the voice. She told her friends to hurry so that they could leave. She told them that she didn't understand a voice calling for help from the bush. Nkemdirim paid closer attention to confirm what she said. When she heard the voice again, she took her cutlass and ran towards the angle where the voice was coming from. Nneoma and Aṅụrịka, trying to stop her, noticed she had gone a bit far and ran after her. On getting to the spot, they saw a young man in a pool of blood, tied to a tree. The young man was bleeding all over. The blood covered his face to the extent that you can't recognize who he is. Nneoma told his friends to leave the young man, that he is a thief that has been caught and punished by the villagers. Nkemdirim, on the other hand, refused to leave the young man in that condition. She pleaded for them to help her untie the young man at least. But they refused and decided to leave her there with the young man. The young man was signaling to Nneoma on a refusal to what she said, thinking she could recognize him, but she didn't. Aṅụrịka, on their way home, told Nneoma that the man in the bush acted as if he knew her, but Nneoma rejected it, saying that considering her beauty, any man would act to have known her just for her attention. When the two girls reached home, they saw Nkemdirim's mother on the way. She was surprised not to have seen her daughter with them, so she quickly asked them, "Where is my daughter Nkemdirim, your friend?" They lied to her, saying that she followed one man who seems like a criminal from the neighboring village. They told her not to worry, that the young man promised to bring her home later. Nwanyima, knowing her daughter so well, knew they were lying, so she went out in search of her daughter Nkemdirim. Because she was the one that described the bush to her daughter, she knew where to find her. It was difficult for Nkemdi to carry the young man alone, so She backed the young man for some distance and then supported him to walk for some distance. This was taking longer than she could imagine. She cried, but still did not want to leave the stranger in the bush. Walking through the bush, Nkemdirim saw something she never expected to see. Her mother's signal, three leaf branches kept as letter N, as she wouldn't like to shout her name in the bush. When she saw the signal, she noticed her mother had come looking for her, so she called her in their sign tone. Her mother later met them and helped her carry the stranger home. Because her mother is a herbalist, she helped to take care of the stranger's wound. To their greatest surprise, after cleaning the stranger, behold, he is the prince, Prince Obiajuro. Nkemdirim and her mother were surprised, at the same time scared of what the king would do to them if he finds out. But the prince pleaded for them to hide him in their house until he is fully recovered and ready to get back at his enemies. Nkemdirim took the responsibility of taking care of the prince, keeping him company. She made sure he didn't lack anything they could provide. As time goes on, Prince began to show affection towards Nkemdirim. When she noticed that the prince was beginning to like her, she became afraid for her friend. So, she asked the prince if he could remember anything that happened in the bush. She asked, hoping that he would not remember. The prince pretended not to remember, so she told the prince that she was not the one who saved him, that a friend of hers did, but begged them to help take care of him. The prince asked her who the person was, and she told him that it was his betrothed, Norma, that saved him. The prince looked at her surprisingly, trying to figure out why she would lie to him. Meanwhile, no one has ever bothered to look for the prince because, according to the king, his father, he went to his maternal side and would come back in 2 months' time. Later, Nkemdirim's friend, Angorika and Nneoma paid her a visit because since she saved the prince, she had not gotten the chance to see them. Angorika, on seeing her, asked her about her criminal husband, while Nneoma asked her whether her stranger rewarded her. Nkemdirim kept quiet while the other girls were talking. They made fun of her, laughing at her. She didn't say anything, rather, she asked Nneoma the last time she saw the prince. She lied to them, telling them that the prince always comes from his maternal side to visit her, and they spent quality time together. She went ahead to tell them that she even saw the prince yesterday. Nkemdirim did not say anything, rather she smiled, and then she told Nneoma that she made the stranger to believe that she was the one that saved him, and he requested to see her. Nneoma got annoyed and warned her never to ever mention her name before a criminal. She begged them to wait and see the stranger, but they refused. Meanwhile, the prince was inside hearing everything they said. Later, Nkemdirim told them that the stranger was the prince of their land. She told Nneoma, "Your prince Obiajuru, he was kidnapped the same day on his way to his maternal place." Then, the prince came outside immediately. Nneoma ran and hugged him, telling him how she had missed him and how she saved him and brought him to the herbalist, Nkemdirim's mother. Nkemdirim nodded in agreement to what she said as the prince looked at her. The prince became angry and left. He wondered why Nkemdirim would lie to him. He quickly rushed inside and told Nwanyima that it's time for him to go back to the palace. He also told her that his enemies had been captured. As Prince Obiajuru was leaving, Nkemdirim felt bad that he was leaving angrily, but she didn't know why. So she quickly ran to him and asked him why he's leaving all of a sudden, but he didn't say anything. Rather, he asked her to go back. Days after Prince Obiajuru returned to the palace, his father, the king, told him that it was time for him to go and marry his betrothed, Nneoma, as they agreed before he traveled. The prince asked his father that every heir in their kingdom is usually presented with different maidens to choose from during marriage. Why then will his own case be different? His father told him that he already had a lover, so there is no need for such gathering again. But Prince Obiajuru insisted that the same thing should be done in his case too. The king rejected his request, but Chief Amadi, his in-law-to-be, told the king to allow him to do as he wished. After all, he already knew who to choose, and my daughter would love it to prove to other ladies that the prince would always choose her over them, he added. The king granted the prince's request, since his in-law had no issue with the idea. The news spread all over the village, and every maiden was busy purchasing adorable outfits and necklaces to make them look different and charming to the prince. Angorika also had bought the best outfits of the time. She so much believed luck could shine on her. Nkemdirim, on the other hand, was not paying attention to the whole preparation. She believed she had no chance, as Nneoma is more beautiful than her. While Nkemdirim was doing her house chores, her mother Nwanyima called her, asking why she is not bothered about the maiden's dance for the prince. Nwanyima told Nkemdirim that the prince loves her and might be doing this to get the chance to choose her. Nkemdirim said to her mother that she likes the prince too, but he is already chosen for her friend, and she wouldn't like to come in between them. Then, her mother told her that whatever Nneoma has with the prince has been annulled the moment the king accepted the ladies' contest for the prince. Nkemdirim still does not want to participate in the contest. Later in the day, the prince came to their house to see Nwanyima, as he had promised to be visiting her once in a while. When Nkemdirim saw the prince, she ran and hugged him in a way that surprised both the prince and Nkemdirim herself. She told the prince that she felt bad the way he left. The prince apologized and finally confessed to her that he loves her. Nkemdirim reciprocated, saying that she loved him too, but will not want to come in between him and her friend Nneoma. The prince begged her to take part in the dance, but she refused. Then the prince begged her for the last favor of coming to the palace on the stipulated day, even if she would not participate. He begged her to come and help him with some things. Nkemdirim could not say no this time, as she always liked to help people. On the day of the ceremony, Nkemdirim went to Nneoma's house to help her with her makeup. She made Nneoma look adorable. Then she quickly rushed to the palace to help the prince. Upon arriving at the palace, she was directed to where she could sit and wait for the prince. Different maidens in their best attire assembled in the palace. It was a very beautiful occasion. After the maidens danced and it was time for the prince to choose his bride, the prince, without wasting time, went down to where Nkemdirim was seated and took her to his father for blessing. His father was shocked. All the people witnessing what was happening left their mouths agape in surprise. The king became angry and tried to stop him, but the prince reminded him that his engagement to Nneoma was annulled the minute the contest was announced to the villagers, and this was according to their tradition. The king kept quiet and could not say anything again. Everywhere became quiet and cold. Then a voice from the crowd shouted, "Bless them, king!" And then all that the king could hear was the voice of the whole villagers echoing the same thing. The king had no other option than to bless the prince and his new wife, Nkemdirim. Immediately he called them in for blessing. Chief Amadi and her daughter Nneoma left the palace immediately. The maidens took Nkemdirim, dressed her in a princess attire, and she looked so adorable. Later, in the middle of the occasion, Nneoma and her father returned to the palace to fight for her right, as she claimed. She stood in the crowd and shouted, "I have a confession to make. Nkemdirim does not deserve the prince, for she is dwelling on my efforts. I saved the prince and took him to them to take care of. But Nkemdirim lied to the prince that she was the one that saved him. And according to our tradition, she should be punished for claiming someone else's effort." As she was talking, everywhere was quiet. People were surprised, looking at Nkemdirim in a strange way. As she was still talking, the prince shunned her and told the guards to take her away, for she is a liar. He narrated everything that happened in the bush to them. Nkemdirim was surprised at how he got to know, and then he told them that he knew and remembered everything that took place in that bush. Nneoma became cold upon hearing this. Immediately, the guards gathered and took her and her father away from the palace. Later, the prince explained to his father all that had happened and how he got to know and love Nkemdirim. After hearing this, the king was happy and embraced Nkemdirim as his lovely daughter-in-law. Nkemdirim and the prince Obiadurum lived together happily. Later, Nkemdirim became the queen after the king died and Obiadurum took over the throne. They both ruled their community happily and peacefully.